Hello everyone, I'm going to carry on reading Fantastic Mr. Fox. We're on chapter 11 and it's a surprise for Mrs. Fox. The small fox ran back along the tunnel as fast as he could, carrying the 3 plump hens. He was exploding with joy. Just wait, he kept thinking, just wait till Mummy sees these. He had a long way to run, but he never stopped once on the way, and he came bursting in upon Mrs. Fox. "Mummy," he cried, out of breath. "Look, Mummy, look! Wake up and see what I've brought you." Mrs. Fox, who was weaker than ever now from the lack of food, opened one eye and looked at the hens. "I'm dreaming," she muttered, and closed the eye again. "You're not dreaming, Mummy. They're real chickens. We're saved. We're not going to starve." Mrs. Fox opened both eyes and sat up quickly. "But my dear child," she cried, "where on earth—" "Boggis's chicken house, number 1, spluttered the little fox. "We tunneled right under the floor, and you've never seen so many big fat hens in your life. And Dad said to prepare a feast. They'll be back soon." The sight of food seemed to give new strength to Mrs. Fox. "A feast it shall be," she said, standing up. "Oh, what a fantastic fox your father is! Hurry up, child, and start plucking those chickens." Far away down in the tunnel, the fantastic Mr. Fox was saying, "Now for the next bit, my darlings. This one'll be as easy as pie. All we have to do is dig another little tunnel from here to there." "To where, Dad?" "Don't ask so many questions. Start digging." There's Miss Fox. Chapter 12, Badger. Mr. Fox and the 3 remaining small foxes dug fast and straight. They were all too excited now to feel tired or hungry. They knew they were going to have a whacking great feast before long, and in fact it was none other than Boggis's chickens they were going to eat, made them chuckle with laughter every time they thought it. It was lovely to realise that while the fat farmer was sitting up there on the hill waiting for them to starve, he was also giving them dinner without knowing. "Keep digging," said Mr. Fox. "It's not much further." All of a sudden, a deep voice above their heads said, "Who goes there?" And the foxes jumped. They looked up quickly and they saw, peeking through a small hole in the roof of the tunnel, a long, black, pointed, furry face. "Badger!" cried Mr. Fox. "Foxy!" cried Badger. "My goodness me! I'm glad I found someone at last. I've been digging around in circles for 3 days and nights, and I haven't foggiest where I am." Badger made the hole in the ceiling bigger and dropped down beside the foxes. There he is. A small badger, his son, dropped down after him. "Haven't you heard what's happening up on the hill?" Badger said excitedly. "It's chaos. Half the wood has disappeared and there are men with guns all over the countryside. None of us can get out, even at night. We're all starving to death." "Who's we?" asked Mr. Fox. "All us diggers. That's me and Mole and Rabbit and all of our wives and children. Even Weasel, who can usually sneak out of the tightest spots, is right now hiding down my hole with Mrs. Weasel and 6 kids. What on earth are we going to do, Foxy? I think we're finished." Mr. Fox looked at his 3 children and smiled. The children smiled back at him, sharing his secret. "My dear old Badger," he said, "this mess you're in is all my fault." "I know it's your fault," said Badger furiously, "and the farmers are not going to give up till they've got you. Unfortunately, that means us as well. It means everyone on the hill." Badger sat down and put a paw around his small son. "We're done for," he said softly. "My poor wife is up there, so weak, she can't dig another yard." There they are. There's his little son. "Nor can mine," said Mr. Fox, "and yet at this very minute she is preparing for me and my children the most delicious feast of plump, juicy chickens." "Stop!" cried Badger. "Don't tease me. I can't stand it." "It's true," cried the smallest foxes. "Dad's not teasing. We've got chickens galore." "And because everything is entirely my fault," said Mr. Fox, "I invite you to share the feast. I invite everyone to share it. You and Mole and Rabbit and Weasel and all of your wives and children. There'll be plenty to go around, I can assure you." "You mean it?" cried Badger. "You really mean it?" Mr. Fox pushed his face closer to Badger's and whispered darkly, "Do you know where we've just been?" "Where?" "Right inside Boggis's chicken house, number 1. "No." "Yes, but that is nothing to where we're going now. You have come just at the right moment, my dear Badger. You can help us dig, and in all the meanwhile your small son can run back to Mrs. Badger and all the others and spread the good news." Mr. Fox turned to the small Badger and said, "Tell them they are all invited to Fox's feast. Then bring them all down here and follow this tunnel until you'll find my home." "Yes, Mr. Fox," said the small Badger. "Yes, sir. Right away, sir. Oh, thank you, sir." And he scrambled quickly back through the hole of the roof of the tunnel and disappeared. Chapter 13. Bunce's Giant Storehouse. "My dear Foxy," cried Badger, "what in the world has happened to your tail?" "Don't talk about it, please," said Mr. Fox. "It's a painful subject." They were digging a new tunnel. They dug on in silence. Badger was a great digger, and in the tunnel went forward at terrific pace now, as he was lending a paw. Soon they were crouching underneath yet another wooden floor. Mr. Fox grinned slyly, showing sharp white teeth. "If I am not mistaken, my dear Badger," he said, "we are now underneath the farm which belongs to the nasty little pot-bellied dwarf Bunce. We are, in fact, directly underneath the most interesting part of that farm." "Ducks and geese?" cried the small foxes, licking their lips. "Juicy, tender ducks and big, fat geese?" "Exactly," said Mr. Fox. "But how in the world can you know where we are?" asked Badger. Mr. Fox grinned again, showing even more white teeth. "Look," he said, "I know my way around these farms blindfolded. For me, it's just easy below ground as it is above." He reached high and pushed one floorboard and then another. He poked his head through the gap. "Yes," he shouted, jumping up into the room above. "I've done it again. I've hit it smack on the nose, right in the bull's eye. Come and look." Quickly, Badger and the 3 small foxes scampered up after him. They stopped and stared. They stood and gaped. They were so overwhelmed they couldn't speak, for now what they saw was a kind of a fox's dream, a badger's dream, a paradise for hungry animals. "This, my old dear Badger," proclaimed Mr. Fox, "is Bunce's mighty storehouse. All his finest stuff is stored in here before he sends it off to market." Against all the 4 walls of the great room, stacked in cupboards and piled upon shelves reaching to the floor to the ceiling, were thousands and thousands of the finest and fattest ducks and geese, plucked and ready for roasting. And up above, dangling from the rafters, there must have been at least 100 smoked hams and 50 sides of bacon. "Just feast your eyes on that," cried Mr. Fox, dancing up and down. "What do you think, eh? Pretty good grub." Suddenly, as though springs had been released in their legs, the 3 hungry foxes and the ravenous hungry Badger sprang forward to grab the luscious food. "Stop!" ordered Mr. Fox. "This is my party, so I shall do the choosing." The others fell back, licking their chops. Mr. Fox began prowling around the storehouse, examining the glorious displays with an expert eye. A thread of saliva slid down one side of his jaws and hung suspended in midair, then snapped. We mustn't overdo it," he said. "Mustn't give up the game away. Mustn't let them know that we've been up here too. We must be neat and tidy and take a few of the choicest morsels. So to start with, we shall have 4 plump young ducks." Then he took them off the shelf. "Oh, how lovely and fat they are. No wonder Bunce gets a special price from the market. All right, Badger, lend me a hand to get them down. You children can help as well. There we go. Goodness me, look how your mouths are watering. And now I think we'd better have a few geese. 3 will be enough. We'll take the biggest. Oh my, you'll never see a finer geese than these in the king's kitchen. Gently does it, that's the way. And about a couple of nice smoked hams. I adore smoked ham, don't you, Badger? Fetch me that step ladder, will you please? Mr. Fox climbed up the ladder and handed down 3 magnificent hams. And do you like bacon, Badger? I'm mad about bacon, cried Badger, dancing with excitement. Let's have a side of bacon, that big one up there. And carrots, said the smallest of the 3 foxes. We must have some of those carrots. Don't be a twerp, said Mr. Fox. You know we never eat things like that. It's not for us, Dad, it's for the rabbits. They only eat vegetables. Quite right. My goodness me, you're right, cried Mr. Fox. What a thoughtful little fellow you are. Take 10 bunches of carrots. Soon all this lovely loot will be lying in a neat heap upon the floor. The small foxes crouched close, their nose twitching and their eyes shining like stars. And now, said Mr. Fox, we shall have to borrow from our friend Bunce 2 of those useful push carts over in the corner. He and Badger fetched the push carts, and the ducks and geese and hams and bacon were loaded onto them. Quickly, the push carts were lowered through the hole in the floor. There they are with all the food piled up. The animals slid down after them. Back in the tunnel, Mr. Fox again pulled the floorboards very carefully into place so that no one could see that they had been moved. My darlings, he said, pointing to 2 of the 3 smaller foxes, take a cart each and run back as fast as you can to your mother. Give her my love and tell her we are having guests for dinner. The badgers, the moles, the rabbits and the weasels. Tell her it must be a truly great feast, and tell her the rest of us will be home as soon as we've done one more little job. Yes, Dad, right away, Dad, they answered, and they grabbed a trolley each and went rushing off down the tunnel. Chapter 14. Badger has doubts. Just one more visit, cried Mr. Fox, and I'll better know where that'll be, said the only small fox left now. He was the smallest fox of them all. Where? Asked Badger. Well, said the smallest fox, we've been to Boggis and we've been to Bunce, but we haven't been to Bean. It must be Bean. You're right, said Mr. Fox. And what you don't know is which part of Bean's place we're about to visit. Which? They both said together. Ah, said Mr. Fox, just you wait and see. They were digging as they talked. The tunnel was going forward faster. Suddenly Badger said, Doesn't this worry you just a tiny bit, Foxy? Worry me, said Mr. Fox. What? All this stealing. Mr. Fox stopped digging and stared at Badger as though he had gone completely dotty. My dear old furry frump, he said, do you know anyone in the whole world who wouldn't swipe a few chickens if his children were starving to death? There was a short silence while Badger thought about this deeply. You are far too respectful, said Mr. Fox. There is nothing wrong with being respectable, Badger said. Look, said Mr. Fox, Boggis, Bunce and Bean are out to kill us. If you realise that, I hope. I do, Foxy, indeed, he said, the gentle Badger. But we're not going to stop at their we're stooped to their level. We don't want to kill them. I should hope not, indeed, said Badger. We wouldn't dream of it, said Mr. Fox. We shall simply take a little food here and there to keep us and our families alive, all right? I suppose we'll have to, said Badger. If they want to be horrible, let them, said Mr. Fox. We down here are decent, peace-loving people. Badger laid his head on one side and smiled at Mr. Fox. Foxy, he said, I love you. Thank you, said Mr. Fox. And now let's get on with the digging. 5 minutes later, Badger's front paws hit against something hard and flat. What on earth is this? He said. It looks like a solid stone wall. He and Mr. Fox scraped away the soil. It was a wall, but it was built of bricks, not stone. The wall was right in front of them, blocking their way. Now, who in the world would build a wall underground? Asked Badger. Very simple, said Mr. Fox. It's the wall of an underground room, and if I'm not mistaken, it's exactly what I'm looking for. Chapter 15. Bean's Secret Cider Cellar. Mr. Fox examined the wall carefully. He saw that the cement between the bricks was old and crumbly, so he loosened a brick without too much trouble and pulled it away. Suddenly, out from the hole where the brick had been, there popped a small, sharp face and whiskers. "Go away," it snapped. "You can't come here, it's private." "Good Lord," said Badger, "it's Rat." "You saucy beast," said Mr. Fox. "I should have guessed we'd find you down here somewhere." "Go away," shrieked Rat. "Go on, beat it. This is my private pitch." "Shut up," said Mr. Fox. "I will not shut up," shrieked Rat. "This is my place. I got here first." Mr. Fox gave a brilliant smile, flashing his white teeth. "My dear Rat," he said softly. Ooh, very angry. "I am hungry. I am a hungry fellow, and if you don't hop it quickly, I shall eat you up in one gulp." Oh, and that did it. Rat popped back out, fast out of sight, and Mr. Fox laughed and began pulling more bricks out of the wall. And when he had made the biggish hole, he crept through. Badger and the smallest fox followed him in. They found themselves in a vast, damp and gloomy cellar. "This is it," cried Mr. Fox. "This is what?" said Badger. "The place is empty." "Where are the turkeys?" asked the smallest fox, staring into the gloom. "I thought Bean was a turkey man." "He is a turkey man," said Mr. Fox, "but we're not after turkeys now. We've got plenty of food." "Then what do we need, Dad?" "Take a good look around," said Mr. Fox. "Don't you see anything that interests you?" Badger and the smallest fox peered into the half-darkness. As their eyes became accustomed to the gloom, they began to see what looked like a whole lot of big glass jars standing upon shelves around the walls. They went closer. They were jars. There were hundreds of them, and upon each one was written the word cider. The smallest fox leapt high in the air. "Oh, Dad," he cried, "look what we found. It's cider." There we go. "Exactly," said Mr. Fox. "Tremendous," shouted Badger. "Bean's secret cider cellar," said Mr. Fox. "But go carefully, my dears. Don't make a noise. This cellar is right underneath the farmhouse itself." "Cider," said Badger, "is especially good for badgers. We take it as medicine, 1 large glass 3 times a day with meals, and another at bedtime." "I will make a feast into a banquet," said Mr. Fox. While they were talking, the smallest fox had a sneak of a jar off the shelf and had taken a gulp. "Wow," he gasped. "Wow-wee!" You must understand it was not the ordinary weak fizzy cider one buys in the store. It was the real stuff, a home-brew fiery liquor that burned your throat and boiled in your stomach. "Ah," gasped the small fox, "this is some cider." His little face. Very cute. "That's quite enough of that," said Mr. Fox, grabbing the jar and putting it on his own lips. He took a tremendous gulp. It's miraculous," he whispered, fighting for breath. "It's fabulous. It's beautiful." "It's my turn," said Badger, taking the jar and tilting his head well back. The cider gulped and bubbled down his throat. It's like melted gold," he gasped. "Oh, Foxy, it's like drinking sunbeams and rainbows." "You're poaching," shrieked Rat. "Put that down at once. There'll be none left for me." Rat was perched upon the highest shelf in the cellar, peering out from behind a huge jug. There was a small rubber tube inserted in the neck of one of the jars, and Rat was using this tube to suck out the cider. You're drunk," said Mr. Fox. "Mind your own business," shrieked Rat. "And if you great clumsy brutes come messing about in here, we'll all be caught. Get out and leave me to sip my cider in peace." At that moment they heard a woman's voice calling out in the house above them. "Hurry up and get that cider, Mabel," the voice called. "You know Mr. Bean doesn't like to be kept waiting, especially when he's been out all night in a tent." The animals froze. They stayed absolutely still, their ears pricked and their bodies tense. Then they heard the sound of a door being opened. The door was at the top of a flight of stone steps leading down from the house to the cellar. It was now someone, and now someone was starting to come down those steps. You can see it all wrapped in this tube. Cheeky rat. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. We've got chapter 16, 17 and 18 left. Not long to go till we finish the book, so I will carry on reading those next time. In the meantime, stay safe, keep working really hard, and I'll speak to you soon. Take care for now. Bye.